What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. And yeah, I guess I've got some explaining to do here. This is our new 2024 Jeep Wrangler JL Rubicon that, as the title states, as I believe, is the most capable Jeep Wrangler ever produced. And we will, of course, explain why here in this video. But this is my new daily driver. If any of you guys follow me on social media or Instagram, you know, way back in November, I actually posted that Cheap Jeep was for sale, my beloved Cheap Jeep. I've had that thing for like 5 years and slowly built that from, you know, it being bone stock to what it was, an extremely capable trail vehicle. Varilocked rear, locked front axles, all those things, and it did that extremely well, and it also drove daily every single day. It took me through winters, it took me on road trips, it did absolutely everything. But I was ready for a change, and I ended up here in a JL of all things. Yeah, I know. Now, for all my Grand Cherokee people, no, don't click away, don't unsubscribe. I'll, of course, always be trying to save the WJs, and I'm actually getting ready to go look at a Jeep here in about an hour and a half that I'm going to attempt to rescue out of somebody's driveway, but we'll see. But back to the JL. Like I said, the most capable factory-built JL of all time, or Wrangler of all time, as I'm going to call this thing. And I did factory order this vehicle, clicked all the check marks that I wanted and didn't check mark the things that I didn't want. So I thought we would talk about how I ordered this thing and why I ordered it how I did and why I was forced to buy a 24 versus buying a used one. And a lot of this stems from being a technician, unfortunately, and having to work on these things every single day. I hope this video doesn't come off as mean or rude to some of the folks that have other powertrains or other options that I'm going to talk about that I didn't want on my personal Jeep, but it's just how I ordered it and how I want to have to deal with this thing, owning it and being the one that has to do the warranty work. So let's start off here with a 2024 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. This is not the Rubicon X package that is now a thing that basically gets you a whole bunch of options from the factory. This is a standard Rubicon that we added a bunch of check marks to. So I guess let's go over those options. I guess kind of loud up front here is the steel bumper and winch group option. You no longer on a Rubicon can order just the steel bumpers as a standalone option like you used to be able to. It is now grouped into a steel bumper and winch group. So we've got a Warren 8,000-pound winch, factory bolted in. It's kind of cool because it comes with the factory warranty, yada, yada, yada. But again, you are paying a higher dollar amount for that option now than what you used to, since you are now forced to get the winch. Now, what I've been told is a lot of these things, Jeep has removed some of the availability to add or really tailor the vehicle more how you want it. You know, a normal Rubicon, you no longer can order a body color hardtop. You cannot order body color fender flares. You've got to go to a higher Rubicon X trim level. And again, that is to kind of weed out some of the options and to streamline production here in 2024. So again, there's a lot of things that you are not able to click unless you go to a higher trim level. So our steel bumper and winch here, the big thing we did was the Extreme 35 package. Now, this used to be called Extreme Recon. It's now called Extreme 35. It's the exact same thing. They just call it differently in the catalog. But what that basically gets you is a lift and 35-inch tall tires. Now, there is a whole plethora of other things that do come with Extreme 35. I will quickly try to run through those things. Again, from the outside, it looks like a mild lift and some 35-inch tall tires, but what you've actually got underneath is a 1.5 inch factory lift. You do have the 35-inch tall KO2s in a load range C, so they are the lighter weight 35s. And then you do have, now new for 2024 is this design, but you have always gotten a factory beadlock capable wheel with your Extreme Recon, or now Extreme 35. Another wheel and tire related thing with the Extreme 35 package is the fact you get the heavy duty brakes option with this package. So the rear rotors are a vented rotor. You just have a slightly more beefy brake setup on these than a standard non-Extreme 35 or Extreme Recon Jeep. Another thing up front is steel steering knuckles. So JL, since they came out in 2018, have had aluminum steering knuckles, which is great for weight savings, great for, you know, every little bit of weight off a vehicle helps it get better fuel economy, but you're giving up a little bit of strength if you are out beating on the thing with aluminum knuckles. Now, no, there's not really a whole bunch of failures out there in the JL world, but you do get the steel steering knuckles with that package for a little bit more strength. Now, to go with those steel steering knuckles, you also get a stronger or thicker axle tubes on your Dana 44 front, and then new for 2024, you get a full floating Dana 44 rear. Now, a full floating axle changes basically where the load is carried on the rear axle assembly. Instead of it being carried on the axle shaft with a roller bearing, you now have a unit bearing that is bolted to the ends of the axle tubes, and then you have a basically floating axle shaft there in the rear that does not carry any weight of the vehicle. All it does is transmit power to those unit bearing hubs and move the vehicle forward. So it's just a stronger, more robust design. Now, another huge thing with the Extreme 35 package is the fact that they come with 456 gearing to move those 35-inch tall tires from the factory. So the fact you're getting a re-geared, basically, Jeep from the factory with a factory powertrain warranty is a massive, massive benefit to somebody that doesn't want to pay after the fact to be able to take their Jeep to a shop and have it re-geared. So that is a really big benefit if you are looking new or used or whatever on that 30. Now, last but least, you do get a few other little weird things. The taillights have extensions on them to move them further out from the vehicle for DOT viewing. I'll show you those when we do our walk around here in a little bit. They're kind of goofy looking and they probably won't stay on this very long. And you also get an extended jack base to help with the factory jack on getting these 35-inch tires off the ground. So guys, back to our options here on this Jeep. We talked about the steel bumper and winch group. We talked about the 35-inch tall package here. Now, like I said, with that 35-inch tall wheel and tire package, you do get the 456 gears. There is now a factory option, I think starting in 22 or 23, that you can factory option 488 gearing on your Jeep Wrangler Rubicons. So a little redundant since you were already paying for the 35-inch tall wheel and tire package for 56 gears, and then you're also optioning 488 gears, but I knew in my heart that I did not want to ever want or need to re-gear this thing in the future. So I did go ahead and option for 488 gears. So this thing is factory 488 gears. And again, that carries a factory warranty. If you take your Jeep, buy it, go to an off-road shop, have them re-gear it, your factory powertrain warranty is no longer at least good on your axle assemblies. That's been opened up. It's got aftermarket parts and pieces. Mopar cannot warranty that. The fact that you can now wheel very confidently with 488 gears and never have to worry about powertrain warranty until it obviously runs out in the future is a cool, cool feature on these newer JLs. Now, 488 gears and 35s is a little bit kind of aggressive, if you will, for street or daily driving. But when this goes off-road, I've already got a set of 37-inch tall mud terrains sitting in the garage on another set of wheels that we'll of course be throwing on so we can wheel even more confidently. And I'm super excited about that because I have never had a vehicle with 37s. The TRX sitting in the garage is on 35s, of course. And then my previous, long before I was ever on YouTube, I had a 2005 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited that I had lifted, re-geared up to 488s and was on, again, 35-inch tall tires, and that thing was awesome. Owned that thing for 11 plus years, and it was super cool. So it's kind of all full circle here that we are now back in a Jeep Wrangler Unlimited with 488 gears and 35s. It's the circle of life, if you will, or circle of Jeep life. Now guys, the last few options that got optioned on this were the convenience group. Now convenience group adds a few just interior things. You've got the heated seats, heated steering wheel, and things like that, remote start, that kind of stuff on the interior. Now, as you guys can see, this one is optioned with the hard top versus the soft top. They just kind of drive a little bit quieter and nicer. Again, I used to be a Wrangler owner, so I know which top I used to like going down the road with more often, so that's why we've got the hard top on this thing. And then, new for 2024 is the option for power adjustable seats in a Wrangler. Yeah, I know it's kind of ridiculous, but the fact that they've got power adjustable seats is pretty cool. Now, the only way to get the power seats is to option for leather. So I did check mark the leather option, kind of just so I could play with the fact that we now have power seats in a Wrangler. Just kind of cool. You know, it will be nice for cleanup for, you know, off-roading, wiping leather down versus, you know, cloth, etc. But really, I just did it for the fact that it is super cool now with the leather seats. Now to the part that hopefully won't anger too many people is powertrain. Now this was optioned with the 3.6 liter Pentastar V6. Now there's a big debate online, the 3.6 or the 2-liter turbo. Again, I am a technician, fortunately or unfortunately, that has to work on these things every day. And yeah, my personal Jeep is going to have a 3.6 liter under the hood. Mom has a 2015 JL with a 3.6, and Dad has a 2020 JL with a 3.6 under the hood. Now the other thing on the 3.6 is the e-torque option. Now it is no longer an option for 2024, but between 21 and about 23, you were almost forced with the 3.6 liter for the e-torque option. Now if you're not familiar with e-torque, that is a hybrid battery electric system that has a motor generator unit in place of your alternator under the hood that has a big, huge, wide supercharger belt that when you get on the throttle really hard, it can change from being a alternator to an electric motor and add horsepower and torque to the engine, which all sounds great, fine and dandy, but there's just so much more added complexity to that system. There are multiple other cooling systems on the vehicle. You've got two other coolant jugs, one for the motor generator unit and then another cooling system that cools a 48-volt battery located under the vehicle. Now, at this point in time, we really have not had too many issues with the e-torque system on Wranglers, so I'm not talking poorly on it due to the fact that, oh man, we are fixing these things all the time, don't you dare buy one. I just see the cost of future repairs and issues being troublesome for owners. So when I was looking for a JL myself, I was strictly looking non-e-torque, which is extremely hard to find if you are looking for a Extreme 35 packaged 3.6 liter non-e-torque. It's almost a unicorn due to the fact that they were all made from the 2021 to 2023 area. Now 2-liter turbo, again, I'm not talking poorly on anybody's option on vehicles. They run extremely well. They have tons of power, tons of torque. We just happen to see more issues than I'd like to deal with on my personal vehicle. We've had a few engine failures. We have a lot of coolant leaks. There's just, again, multiple cooling systems on those 2-liter turbos that we see issues with. That's why this thing ended up getting ordered because, like I said, right now for 2024, you can order a 3.6 liter without e-torque. There's no 48-volt battery under this thing. There's no additional cooling systems. There's no motor generator to have to work around when you are doing engine-related repairs in the engine bay. And that's why I ended up, again, with a 2024 versus finding a used one and saving thousands of dollars. It was worth it to me in my dumb mechanic tech head to do this just for the reduced complexity under the hood and under the vehicle. Now, a couple of the new things for 2024, again, we talked about that full floating Dana 44 in the rear, which is really cool to say. Now, do we have issues with the previous Dana 44s? No, not at all. But added strength is always a cool thing off-road. Now, obviously, as you guys can see, 2024s did get a new grille, and love it or hate it, it's there on most of the models. And personally, I think it looks really good in person. Correspondingly, on the interior, you do have a new 12.3-inch massive touchscreen on the dash there. Now, there was no issues with the previous 8.4 or 7-inch screen JLs. They've just, of course, had to adapt with the times. Everybody wants screens on their vehicles, and they've got one on there now, and it honestly works just fine. All right, guys, now last long talk on a option here is the fact this is not a Rubicon X. Now, Rubicon X basically adds all the options that I optioned on this thing, but gets you painted flares, painted hardtop, just a bunch of cool things for basically the same amount of money that I spent on this thing. So you might be wondering, well, why wouldn't you have optioned a higher trim level for the same amount of money? I mean, heck, resale would have been better. It would have been worth more in the long run. But there's one massive glaring issue with the Rubicon X, and that's the transfer case on that vehicle. Any of the vehicles, I believe around 2020 or 2021, you could start optioning an automatic transfer case. So it would still have a two-wheel drive position, but it had a four-wheel drive auto, a four-wheel drive part-time, neutral, and four-low position. That's kind of where we're seeing some issues on the Wranglers. This transfer case was also available in the Gladiators also. And then correspondingly, 392s have a full-time all-wheel drive transfer case. Now, any of those transfer cases that have the auto or full-time position, I guess, if it has auto or if it's a 392 with the full-time all-wheel drive transfer case, those transfer cases have a clutch type system in the transfer case. The issue with that is clutches wear. Even in four-wheel drive high or four-wheel drive low, there is no physical lock for that transfer case. All the vehicle's doing is applying clutch pressure as hard as it can to hopefully hold the front and rear axles together. Now, that system works great while it's new, but as that system wears, those clutches get worn, and eventually they wear to the point that the vehicle can't apply those clutches firm enough to lock the front and rear together. And that's what I didn't want to run into. The whole point behind ordering a non-Rubicon X and optioning a whole bunch of darn options was purely not to have to get the transfer case I didn't want. We've already had a couple come into the shop with transfer case clutches worn codes, basically at the point that they are unable to lock themselves. The computer is seeing that it's requiring too much application of those clutches to get the vehicle to lock or not lock, if you will. Now, I of course plan to daily drive this thing, which will be no issue, but the fact that I do plan to wheel this thing just as hard as I did my Jeep Grand Cherokee, I just didn't want the fact those clutches to possibly slip. You're trying to climb up a rock ledge, you've got the rear axle locked up, the front axle spinning, and don't have positive lock in that transfer case like you would with a mechanically locking transfer case in all the other Wranglers. Now, even the 392 guys are also having these issues with clutches worn. It's just kind of a thing when you've got a clutch style transfer case. Now, there's some guys that have went out and bought the other transfer case, spent multiple thousands of dollars to swap the transfer case and swap the computer module. It's a whole thing to spend even more money to try to correct a unfortunately optioned transfer case on some of these Jeeps. So that's why we're here. That's why we've got a non-X Rubicon, and that's why I had to option a whole bunch of options to make it how I wanted it, even though it wasn't the better financial decision. But guys, I'm super excited. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to do to this thing. No, we aren't going outrageously crazy. We're gonna make it a teeny bit taller. Again, we've got our 37-inch tall tires. We've got, you know, small, tasteful mods. As you guys know, if you've watched the channel, I am a big OEM Plus guy. I like it still kind of looking factory, even though it's not, with OEM Plus tasteful upgrades, and that's what, of course, we'll do to this thing. So guys, I guess let's go get this thing out on the road. We'll make a quick lap around the block because, to be honest, this is the first re-geared JL that I've driven, or driven for any amount of distance. So let's go throw the camera in this thing and go out and at least get on the highway, and you can see what the RPMs are with 488 gears, 35s at 60 mile an hour, and we're gonna... All right guys, real quick before we get on the road, I thought we'd do a quick little walk around. Here are those tail light extensions that we talked about. They are moving the tail light out and over about an inch. Again, I believe that's for DOT light, viewing light, whatever. With that extended spare tire, you've got to have those lights pushed out a little bit further. Here is our tailgate reinforcement, again included with that Extreme 35 package. And then jumping into the interior, we've got our big, massive 12.3 inch screen. And for the first time ever, we've got our power seats here on a Wrangler. We've got recline, we've got the seat up and down, we've got our lumbar support here in the front. But other than that, it is the same JL that it has been for quite some time. We did get some revised cabin lights here on the roll bar. And then again, for the first time, we do have side curtain airbags on a Wrangler. Now guys, I was super interested to see how the 488 gears were going to feel on this thing. I have never, again, driven a Jeep, I guess knowingly that it was so deeply re-geared in a JL. Now the JLs with the automatic transmission have the amazing ZF 8-speed, which is such a darn good transmission. So even with factory gears and larger tires, they still move really, really well. That's one of the things you guys have heard me preach about on some of the lifted Wranglers that we've taken out and driven, is just how darn good they still drive, even on factory gearing. So again, was very excited to see how this thing felt, to see, you know, was it outrageously high RPMs going down the road or what? Now the only thing you kind of notice here on initial takeoff is first gear does seem even more shorter than a normal JL. Of course, the 8-speed has a very short first gear due to the fact it is very low geared. So the fact it now has 488 gears in the axles seems to make it even more ridiculously short. Now jumping onto the highway here, again, it really doesn't feel that different than a stock geared Wrangler. Seems to accelerate very similarly. And yeah, if you didn't know it was re-geared, I don't know if you would, you know, if you would notice, if you will. Just that 8-speed transmission seems to absorb that higher gearing really, really well. Here I am cruising at 65 miles an hour, and I am just barely over 2,000 RPMs here on the TAC. Now, ride quality. I have been driving this thing for a couple of nights now, and it rides like a Wrangler. Again, this is slightly lifted over stock height, but these still just have red-bodied Rubicon shocks. No crazy Fox shocks or anything like that from the factory, and it rides very similarly to every other Wrangler. Feels very stock. Everything is very normal in here. Now again, like I said guys, I do plan on a little bit more height out of the suspension, but we're going to be doing it on an extreme budget, and I'm excited to show you guys that here shortly. And then I'm excited to start wheeling this thing. I'm excited to wheel something with 37s on it for the first time in my life and see how much easier obstacles are going up and down. We've got a lot of rocks and a lot of rock ledges at our off-road areas here local to us. So guys, super excited about the new JL here on the channel, and I hope you're excited too. And again, like I said, Grand Cherokee folks, don't worry, I'm always going to be buying them and saving them, and I'll of course be bringing you guys along on the journey. So guys, until next time, which will probably be me out in the garage doing something to this thing, because I do have a decent amount of parts that I've been collecting while this thing has been on order. I thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.